Jordan, we are ready on eScribe and live streaming on YouTube.
Great, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We can go ahead and get started, and I'll call the Land Use and Planning Committee to order. We have a long meeting today. We'll try to move through it efficiently and get everyone out of here on time. So, of course, this is another virtual meeting. You members of the public who are watching this via MCAT or online can join the live meeting by visiting the agenda. That can be found at ci.missoula.mt.us/webcast. From there, you'll find a link to our meeting calendar and an opportunity to join the live meeting. When you join the meeting via Zoom, you can provide public comment by raising your hand in Zoom. You can, if you're joining us by phone, you can press *9 on your phone, and that'll indicate that you want to give public comment. You can also call and leave us a voicemail at 552-6012, or provide comment by email at council@ci.missoula.mt.us. Both of the agenda items today are discussion only, and council will not be taking, the committee will not be taking any action on these items today. So there's opportunity to provide public comment through the conclusion of our public hearings on Monday, October 4th. So with that, we can move into our meeting, and our first item is roll call. And Amanda, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Anderson?
Present.
Becerra?
Present.
Contos?
Here.
Harp? Absent? Hess?
Present.
Jones?
Present.
Merritt?
Present.
Ramos? Absent? Cheryl? Absent? Basika?
Present.
Von Lossberg?
Here.
West? Absent.
Great, thank you. So we have approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes. We have one from July 21st and also one from September 15th. Are there any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, those will stand approved. And we can move on to public comment. Is there any public comment on items not listed on our agenda? And again, to provide public comment, just use the hand raise feature within Zoom. Okay, seeing none. I do see, okay. Ms. Harp was in our attendees list and is joining. So for the record, Heather Harp is here and Heidi West is also here. All right, we have two regular agenda items. We'll take them in the order listed. And so the first one is the Unleash boarding kennel. This was heard on Monday, the 27th. So I'll turn it over to Spencer first for any updates. And Spencer, I think we don't need a presentation, but just any changes or updates or any answers to any questions that have come up between the start of the public hearing and now.
Yes, we received further public comment from an additional member. They mirrored concerns raised by other commenters, or the other commenter on the noise generated by the use. In addition, the applicant clarified that AstroTurf will not be installed on the entirety of the outdoor area, but a portion of the outdoor area.
Okay. So at this point, I think you would open it up to any committee questions or discussion, and we'll start with Stacy, followed by Julie.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I have my questions that I wrote down from the presentation last Monday evening. So I guess in the presentation, Spencer, you said that the capacity for the boarding will be a maximum of 20 dogs. So I'm curious what the current capacity of the animal daycare is. Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions. So I don't know if you want me to ask them one at a time or kind of put them all out now.
You can go ahead. You can go and do them one at a time, or whatever is most appropriate with your questions. Go ahead.
Okay.
I will. Jennifer Hanneland and David Gray from DVG are present, and it might be more appropriate for them to answer that question.
Just a moment. I'm admitting them into the meeting. Okay, Jennifer and David, you're both. You should be able to join us now. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Jennifer, was the capacity right now 20 dogs of the daycare?
Of the daycare, it's 20 dogs capacity, but for boarding, it's only 10.
Got it.
Great. Thanks so much for that clarification. In the presentation, it said that there will be staff at the facility in a 24/7 capacity, so that there will never be a period of time when the dogs are not there, or the dogs are there alone in the boarding capacity. So I'm curious if there's any additional infrastructure. I mean, because it's a little bit different build out from an office that isn't intended to have someone there 24/7. You know, I don't know, Spencer, from our regulation standpoint, or you know, because it's not a tradition. I mean, it is an office, it is a commercial space, but there will be a kind of, you know, accommodations for staff to be able to spend the night there. So, and kind of along that lines, is there any additional safety measures such as sprinklers or things that are required? Because, you know, most office and commercial uses are not over, you know, there's long periods of time where there's no one there on the weekends and on overnight. And this will be an animal facility where there will always be either animals or people there, and wondering if there's additional safety components if there was something to happen that would be required.
As far as sprinklers are concerned, that's something I can follow up on with our building department to see if the use classification would change and require the building to be sprinklered. I did reach out to the building department as part of agency comment, and they did not provide a comment reflecting such requirement. But I will reach out specifically to answer your question, and we'll have an answer in a memo form to you after this meeting. Regarding on-site facilities, I did reach out to the applicant as a follow-up to clarify the application to see if there was any facilities provided to the staff on site that would vary from what was provided for the daycare. There was no facilities indicated at the time in which we had spoke about that improvement. And perhaps Jennifer can speak to what staff will, what's expected of overnight staff and how they will operate in that capacity and what facilities will be available.
Yeah, Jennifer, David, feel free to chime in on that.
Yeah, so I talked to Jennifer about it, and so it's not a sleepover facility. They're working at night to make sure that there isn't a problem and to also try to avoid complaints with the neighbors. So just like emergency services or grocery stores, that kind of thing, you know, the people on duty at night are working a shift. So they have the same employee lounge as anyone that is working in the day, but they are working at night. So there is no sleeping rooms. They will not be sleeping while they're on staff. They're there to make sure the animals are protected and everyone is safe and the animals are not creating a problem for adjoining neighbors.
Great, thank you. Stacey, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay, great. And did you have any more follow-ups or are you set?
That I'm set for now, thank you.
Okay, okay, go ahead, Julie. And Julie, you're muted.
My tile moved right when I clicked it. The question that I have is about our decision-making space regarding this request. Spencer, I think that maybe you had a slide in your presentation about this. So what are the things as decision makers here? What do we need to consider of from the city ordinances that really, I guess, just define our decision-making space? If that question makes sense.
Yeah. So I believe Council Member Merritt, you were asking about the 7 criteria outlined in Title 20. These form the basis of the decision-making ability of council. I'll brush over them generally as they are quite verbose in their.
Yeah, would it be possible for you? Did you have a slide?
I did have a slide. I can bring that up.
That would be helpful, so we can see that while we're thinking about it. And I apologize. I should have warned you that I was going to ask this question.
Oh, no, it's fine. I had it ready to go. So this, so generally we're looking at compliance with the growth policy and zoning standards. We're looking at whether the use is in the interest of public convenience, meaning it provides a service that is convenient to the surrounding area. It will have no significant impact on general welfare. In addition, compatible with character, site and building designs, meaning that it's fitting in with the character of the surrounding area. In this case, it's within a commercial development and is commercial use. In addition to that, compatible with operating characteristics, meaning things such as hours of operation, similar use types, noise, traffic generation, those characteristics of the area surrounding it, as well as traffic safety. This one looks more specifically for all modes of transportation, meaning that it has safe and reasonable access and that there are multiple transportation facilities surrounding it. And then that the use won't impede any improvements of the surrounding properties. Again, it's commercially zoned area with a business zoning district to the north of it and has been developed already. And then finally, properly addresses open space, light, and protection of natural features. And this standard would likely apply to something that's maybe closer in proximity to public space and open lands designated areas. And then again, the applicant has not made any proposals to install new lighting or change the external structure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Julie, do you have additional questions?
No, I just needed a refresher on those criteria. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess my overarching question is that, I mean, essentially conditional use is a review category or a type of use that is not a by right use, and it's conditional because there are it's a use that could be disruptive or inappropriate, and there's mitigating factors that could make it appropriate. We see that with casinos and gambling. We see that with service of alcohol. We see that with car washes, and uses that if not done correctly could be impactful. And I guess I can certainly see that with a dog boarding facility, just in terms of if you know, and I could see that being a facility that's run extraordinarily well and fits into a neighborhood really well, and provides a a safe, comfortable facility for people who need to board their dogs. And I can also see the flip side of that coin. And I wonder if maybe the applicant could maybe just speak to why this facility is planned to be, on the maybe you could just talk a little bit about about the facility that you're planning and how you think it meets how you think it'll fit in the neighborhood, and how you plan to be a good neighbor.
So right now, currently it is a daycare. So they're running animals there right now. So we submitted this application last summer. It's just taken a while with all the COVID things happening to finally come to council. So she does have in the application a whole slew of support letters as well. So they're not particularly public comment, so I just wanted to point that out to the council because you may not have seen them. But either way, they interview the dogs that are going to be there to make sure they're a good fit. I bring my dog to a dog daycare once a week, and they have the exact same policy. So they want to make sure that the dog, is not a barker. The dog is not aggressive. The dog can play with other dogs fine. So they do that same process to get into the place. Much of the facility is indoors. The building is a concrete block building. So as far as sound goes inside, that's pretty good. It's hard to get better in concrete block. They've added a considerable amount of acoustical materials on the ceiling and on the walls inside of the space. There was initially a week ago, a comment came in, and there was a complaint from a neighbor that said that there was a barking dog and one of the staff members was loud. That's the first complaint they've actually heard of. So we immediately jumped on that right away. They reviewed staff. They actually let that one staff member go for this reason and some other reasons. And then they've come up with some additional training to do with staff to make sure that problem doesn't occur in the future. We've also hired an acoustical engineer to help with acoustics on the exterior of the building to try to eat noise. There's a small outdoor play area which has its own outdoor potty in it. So we are adding additional screening on the play area. We are looking at adding additional acoustical sound absorbing materials on the building to try to keep that noise down for the neighborhood of what would occur. They are adding additional screening, and they've also added some additional bushes that we'll have in pots around the screening to try to add as much soft material as we can there to impact the neighbors to the least degree possible. Trying to be a very good neighbor. She's very proactive about this.
Great. Thanks for that description. I appreciate that. So I don't have any further questions myself. Okay, I do see Stacey Anderson has your hand up. Go ahead, Stacey.
Yes, it is. Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. Spencer, you had made a comment in your opening that there was a change in what was planned outside in terms of AstroTurf being there from what maybe was presented in the presentation on Monday. Could you kind of go back to that again, and then what is there now currently, and what actually is the applicant proposing to change if this conditional use is granted?
So currently it's a paved space with a contained bathroom unit for animals to relieve themselves on and capture the waste. The applicant is proposing to install a AstroTurf contained area similar to the one that's present. And with some of the paving remaining, previously I had made the statement that the applicant was going to install AstroTurf in that outdoor area. And I was, after the meeting, DVG, David Gray reached out and just wanted to clarify that it was a portion of the outdoor space and not the outdoor space in its entirety. After this meeting, the applicant, and as David alluded to earlier, is looking to install additional screening and those potted plants and those softening elements to help mitigate the sounds from traveling offsite as much as possible. Perhaps David or Jennifer, did I miss anything as far as what improvements will be installed in the outdoor spaces?
That is correct.
So, Mr. Chair, if I just may clarify, so the outdoor footprint will not change, just some of the features of the outdoor space are proposed to change.
I believe that is correct. And David, could you confirm that?
Yeah, we're making improvements to lower any potential noise pollution that could come from the kennel. The comments we received, well, the city received and then shared with us. So we decided, based on those comments, to improve the screening. There's considerable screening right now, but there's going to be considerably more screening around it. And then we're going to add some more soft materials to actually eat the noise like you would landscaping, putting some bushes and that kind of thing to screen things. And then we got a hold of the acoustical engineer to help us come up with a physically designed solution to make sure what we're doing is best for everybody.
Okay, great. Heidi?
So I was wondering how wet waste is treated in this space.
So the owner has they have a line out for the employees. It's a 2-page list of what they will do to keep everything clean and sterile and keep the smell out of the place. She does not want to smell that in her facility or outside the facility. So they actually have, again, there are potty boxes that the animals use, but if there is an accident, they have 2 wet and dry vacs. They're 1-gallon ones that they walk around with. So any liquid waste inside or outside the building is vacuumed up with a wet and side vac. They have disinfectant where they clean it immediately so it doesn't soak into the materials. And any solid waste that is done in the box or outside the box is immediately cleaned up and disposed of as well. So either way, all of it is cleaned, disinfected, and put into the appropriate containers. It's not left out there to build up a large amount of smell and annoy the neighbors. It's taken care of right away.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I don't see any additional questions. Does anyone else have anything to add or any questions? Julie.
Jordan, I believe that Mr. Sawyer is in the attendees and he wanted to make public comment.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So we can go to public comment now. So Mr. Sawyer or anyone else in the public who would like to make comment, just use the hand raise function in Zoom. Okay. Mr. Sawyer, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, I tried unmuting. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, so I do live across from the place. I don't know if you can see it here now. That's it. Neighborhood view.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sawyer, you're cutting out quite a bit. We're losing you.
This is where we live. We don't live in a commercial district. This isn't a commercial place at all. This is where we live, and they're across the street from us over there. And the problem is there's like young families and young kids, people that live here in the neighborhood, and it's just not a great place to have a kennel. I don't think that's a great idea. to have a dog kennel that close to all the neighbors. And it was it was considerably louder before Jennifer did the mitigation stuff. But I just can't see living across the street from a kennel all day, all night. I don't know if you would want to live next to one or across the street from one, but that's not me. Thanks for letting me vent, I guess.
Yeah, and Mr. Sawyer, I apologize. We lost you for about 20 seconds at the beginning of your remarks, and so if and we're not able to I think maybe you're looking to show us the area. We weren't able to set. I wanted to just highlight that for you. If there's anything that you want to mention again, and you're more than welcome to send any photos that would help illustrate your point to the city council email address as well. And I can I can provide that to you if you're ready.
Great.
So that's council@ci.missoula.mt.us.
Mr. Sawyer, I also received your email and can forward on the city council email for your convenience.
Great, thanks, Spencer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just it's not I'm sure Jennifer's fine. She seems to be like a really nice lady, and she's trying to do stuff that's right. It's just that for us to live this close to a dog kennel is undesirable. Every time the dogs bark, my dogs bark. Every time my dogs bark, the neighbor's dogs bark. And it's just an unending cycle and it's just a matter of having that many dogs in an area. I love dogs. I've got 2, but having 20 dogs, I don't want to live with 20 dogs. I certainly don't want to live with 22 dogs. So I'm kind of in a spot. I don't want to be a complainer. I try to keep to myself and not cause any trouble for anybody. It's just a difficult situation for me. I've got one grandchild that I'm raising who is autistic, and loud noises bother him very bad. Until he was in 2nd grade, he didn't do any of the outside activities outside of the classroom because the noises were too loud. He wouldn't do gym, he wouldn't do music, he couldn't do anything like that because of noise. And the other one is noise sensitive as well. So it's difficult for us to be in that kind of environment.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments. And again, please, Spencer will forward us your email, and please feel free to send any other photos or anything that you think would be helpful to us before our final decision on Monday night.
Excellent. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, would anyone else like to provide public comment today? Okay, seeing none. This is just discussion only today, so there's no decision to be made, and we will have this back. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Haviland.
I would just like to say that the dogs are actually inside for boarding. Like, there's the final potty break when we close. My plan is the final potty break would be around 8 o'clock when we close our doors. And then everybody will just stay inside for the night. They won't be outside barking to hurt the neighbors or disturb the neighbors in any way.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the clarification. Okay, so we will have this item back for our final consideration on Monday night. And again, if any other questions come up, feel free to send them by email, and we'll get them answered in the record on Monday. Without anything further on this item, we can move on to our next agenda item. And this is the rezone of 500 South Higgins Avenue from Missoulian PUD and M1R-2 Limited Industrial Residential to C1-4 Neighborhood Commercial with a DE-D Design Excellence Overlay, hip strip, and OP1 open space. Again, this one, we had a public hearing on this that began on Monday, 27th. I know we have had a few questions by email. So maybe I'll just turn it over to Cassie for a brief recap of the project as you see fit, Cassie, and then any new information that may have emerged since Monday.
Yeah, I'll just generally go over which areas will be zoned what. There's the boundary line relocation. So they're requesting that everything north of this irrigation ditch to the river be zoned open space, which preserves it as open space. You can't add residential, commercial uses, buildings like that in here. And south of that line, you'll see the C1-4 zoning district, which has no setbacks. It is allows for high density residential, allows commercial uses, some industrial. And then it's proposed to have a design excellence overlay on it, specifically the hip strip sub-district. And that will require certain design elements, which I can go over in more detail again if you would like. We did receive, or I received 3 public comments sent over from Gwen. Admin staff had trouble getting that uploaded on eScribe today, but they should be available tomorrow or at least by the end of the week for you to review. They were mostly concerned with increases in traffic that could be possibly caused by the rezoning. And I'll note that at building permit, any development that may lead to 200 or more average daily trips per day, we can get a traffic impact study, which can lead to us requiring certain improvements to the adjacent streets. There was other concerns over the height. The maximum height's 125 feet. At our last meeting on Monday, I was asked to get the heights of a couple nearby buildings. The Reed condos going in on 4th Street are going to be a little less than 62 feet tall on the north side, which is where the street is, and 50 feet tall on the south rear side of the building, measured from existing grade, that is. And then I couldn't find the exact height of the Penwell building, which is across the street on Higgins from this site. It was built in 1910, so no building permits on record from that long ago. But it's 3 stories, and I'm estimating it's probably between 32 and 36 feet in height. Say if, the first story were 12 feet and then the other 2 were 10 feet. It's probably pretty close to that range. Let's see, I think we had some questions over parking and how that works in our incentives. I can give sort of a brief overview on how parking works in zoning and design excellence in general. So this zoning district does require parking, unlike the central business district you'd see across the river. And Title 20, we have this section and it's by use. So dwelling units require parking based on the size of the unit. Larger units require more parking. And then the commercial uses that could go in there, it's really depends on each, but these are the same standards that apply across the city. Some are square footage based, some are employee based, depending on the activity itself. In design excellence, give me a moment to scroll. There is an allowance for some parking incentives. They could potentially reduce the parking requirement that I showed before. Let me find this. Up to 50%. Some of the ways they could do that would be to use this on-street parking substitution, meaning parking spaces that fit these certain requirements abutting the site could be counted 1-for-1 for what the requirement is. This would not be adaptive reuse unless they did decide to reuse the Missoulian building. So probably not that one. And then transit served locations like this one that are well served by bus stops and also bike lanes are eligible to get a percentage of their parking requirements knocked off. And then bike parking, there's some regular incentives in Title 20 that don't relate directly to design excellence. And those are things like shared uses. Let's say they proposed offices in here as well as residential. Those uses sort of have different times of the day where the people are at the site. So they could share some of that parking. But it would be standard what's allowed in design excellence across the city. I'm happy to take additional questions or recap anything from last week's presentation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cassie. Heidi.
I just had a quick clarification question on the design excellence parking reductions. Those only apply to commercial uses, right? Not residential.
Let me review. There are some for residential. They're not specific to commercial. Some of them are. I'm double checking. Incentives. They can apply to residential,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
The on-street substitution, both residential and yeah, most of them do apply to both. There are a couple that are specific, like shared parking, which focuses on the use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Gwen and then Stacy.
Thanks, Cassie, for going over that information. I just wanted to go over a couple of points, and it probably is a little repetitive, but at different times, different people tune into the meetings, and I know that people in this neighborhood are just trying to understand the process and potentially what's coming. So I wanted to just clarify. My understanding is that the remainder of the hip strip is already zoned C1-4.
Yep.
That this Missoulian was, because they did the printing presses there when they built this building back in the early 80s, I think, that they created a separate zoning district for it and it was more industrial. And so this is eliminating that and rezoning it to C1-4. That's the proposal, which basically brings it into alignment with the rest of the hip strip. So
Yep,
correct?
that's correct. And you can see here, even though these buildings along the hip strip are smaller scale, they're not as tall, they are zoned for 125 feet and could demo them and build to that height by right now. So it's just this one Missoulian parcel that would be rezoned more or less to kind of match the other zoning districts you see along Higgins in this area.
Okay, so then we just have some consistency up and down the entire hip strip for future development in terms of whatever that looks like. And if you could just once more show the setback slide. There was a visual that you were able to show on Monday night, I think, where it under our design excellence program, which provides sideboards on how development can take place on our main commercial corridors. So this, thanks for bringing that up. I just wanted to reiterate that if they do put in something that's really high, they'll have to use these setback functions as a mechanism to moderate it and make it fit in and scale it basically to the streetscape. That's the intention there?
That is the intent. And in this sub-district, you can go up 4 stories or 60 feet before you have to step back 10 feet for the other stories. So you'll see them move back from that front facade going up. There's one exception where a portion of the building can go up 1 additional story, 30% of that street facing facade up 1 more story before stepping back. And that's just to create some modulation. It still has to step back after that additional 5th story. But to kind of move that monolithic appearance away from the street, sort of minimizes the appearance of the height by setting it back from where a pedestrian or someone in a car would be looking at the building.
Thanks for spelling that out. And Jordan, can I have another one?
Yep, go ahead, Gwen.
Thanks. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on parking once again, and thanks for the information and the graph you showed us. Parking is something that is to be determined based on the use that will go in, but there'll be some accommodation there regarding the use, considering the direction that the zoning is going in. But I just wanted to point out that I think there is a broader conversation regarding the entire parking commission and having jurisdiction over a bigger area that includes the hip strip along, kind of connecting the entire university area and downtown. And I don't think there's public comment submitted, and that's not really an issue that's in front of us, but I think it's something that it's a conversation this community needs to have, and we periodically bring it up, and we've got a new parking commissioner who needs to get settled. And then I plan on having coffee with him to talk about that. But I just, I think parking is, it's several levels. There's parking specific to this project. There's also parking in general as an issue on the entire hip strip that we need to have that conversation at some point. So just wanted to put that out there, and I'll reference it Monday night again.
Yep, and I had an email from the parking commission, so I need to check back and get back to them. That is conversations we're hoping to have.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Great. Okay, Stacy.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. So Cassie, on the slide that you were showing, I'm assuming the setbacks for the roads that you were talking about would have to do with the northwest corner, so the corner of Higgins and I think it's 4th Street there. Wait,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So that would be sort of the reference point at if you're looking at this slide, the kind of picture for the upper left-hand corner. So where they could really, kind of be a monolith would be on the side, the northeast side of the building.
Northeast. Yeah, so there's what's called a build to zone and build to width. And what's that saying is the building needs to be pushed up to that intersection or very close to it to try to create active street frontage, sort of like the other side of the hip strip where you can walk along the sidewalk and there's buildings right there and entries right there. It's very active space. So the focus is on getting that massing at the top set back away from that intersection and those streets. It's very focused on people's view from the sidewalk there.
Right.
So the massing would be pushed back toward the rear of the site, toward the park space.
I appreciate that. Can I have a follow-up / other kind of a different direction on the same topic, Mr. Chair?
Go right ahead.
So the thing that I'm thinking a lot about when I drove over the bridge the other day when passing that building was the fact that it could potentially go straight up the whole entire allotted 125 feet from the river view. From the river, if you're on the river, you would just basically see a giant building right there. What is the distance? And I'm sorry if I missed it on that particular slide that shows that it's open space from the river edge to a certain amount. I think there's an irrigation ditch, and then that. Do we have any idea of how far away from the actual river edge the start of the edge of the building will be?
And they did not submit a development plan, so we haven't seen exactly what uses or what design is going in there. I will note that there are some constraints with having to provide parking, density reduction. So that can influence how tall the building will be depending on how much the site allows for. And let me just pull up a map so I can sort of measure for you guys. Let's see here. Don't know off the top of my head, but we can find out. So here's that ditch you see. If we break out this tool, which is really clunky, to about the riverbank, we're looking at maybe, about 100 feet, depending on which location you're in from the river where, this is where, that's the north side of the ditch, so they can't build there. The zoning would start about here, so even 150. It would be about. And there's likely a ditch easement too. I don't know that number either, but that could push it back another few feet. Ditch companies don't let you build right up to it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and we don't currently have any, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, can I have a follow-up?
Go right ahead.
Don't want to monopolize the questioning here, but we don't currently in our zoning take into any separate. We don't have like a waterfront district or, I know the answer to this, but the fact that we allow zoning, there is no separate zoning that runs kind of like the river corridor to take into account, kind of the gradual, not to basically create a corridor of really tall buildings in our city center with the river running through it.
Yeah, and so let me see how I can word this. That's part of the reason that the growth policy does show that area as open lands and resource. The only zoning district that aligns with that growth policy recommendation is OP1. which just allows parks, open space, agriculture. So that creates a buffer with that growth policy. And then on the other side of the river, there is a standard that in the central business district, so that wouldn't affect this site, but downtown, they have to be set back 50 feet from the river. And a lot of that's currently park space, which is how it's protected. But for any parcel that's not along there, there is a setback in that zoning district from the river.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay. I don't see any other hands up. Feel free to jump in if you have extra questions. I'll open it up for any public comment as well. Heather.
Thanks, Jordan. Cassie, could you bring up the screen again with the step back illustration?
Yeah.
Excellence overlay.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I think I froze for a minute. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. Let me see if I can
Your
do
slide
this.
did just show up.
What was that?
Oh, your
Okay,
slide did just show up.
it just froze, so I didn't know if anyone was speaking during that
Oh.
time. Was there a question asked or just asking to see it?
I have a question once it reloads here. And as it starts to do that, Cassie, so with the step back provision, that happens on the 5th story, correct?
Yes. So
Okay. And at what point does a builder have to install one, not two, elevators for a building of this size?
it completely kicked me out of Zoom for a moment. So you said at the 5th story, and then I heard elevators.
Yep. At what point in height is there a requirement for installing a elevator?
Oh, that's building code, but I'll double check and confirm. I believe it's past 3 stories.
That's what it is to my recollection too. I'm happy for you to confirm that. So I guess one of the things I look at this design excellence, and I think all of us really appreciate the efforts that went into this particular project in terms of design excellence. But when I look at that, I also compare that to past buildings in which we've discussed. And I think about what would have been if the Wilma had to have that imposed upon them and how that structure would have been very different from what we have today. And I bring it up because I think all of us are very much aware the cost that it takes today in terms of constructing buildings today. It is far more expensive today. And so when we have these design excellence characteristics that we require in these particular projects, there's always going to be trade-offs that we have to have appreciation for. So when we have these setbacks, it means that there's less square footage that can be constructed for residents or commercial capacities. And just for us all to understand that there is a lot at risk here. And when we start adding on additional parking requirements and the like, it just continues to drive up the cost. And I think we just all need to appreciate that and make sure our constituents understand that there is a lot of trade-offs that we oftentimes, actually 100% of the time that I've been on council, not once have we ever discussed the dollars for each of these particular conditions that we put on projects. So let's just be mindful of that as we proceed through this project. Thank you.
Thanks. Any additional questions or comments? All right. So I'll call one more time for public comment. I think we just have mostly just the applicant team here. So if there's anything that anyone from the applicant team wants to add as well, that's of course appropriate now. Okay, Jamie. Apologize, Zoom's a little slow for me today.
Same.
Jamie, you should be able to join us.
Great. Thank you, Jordan. Really just want to compliment Cassie on her excellent staff report and the questions and comments that we have heard from the public as well as the council. This is a fairly straightforward rezoning in line with the planning policies that have been adopted recently, including the growth policy, the downtown master plan, a place to call home, the design excellence manuals we've been talking about, and even the long range transportation plan. This is definitely a location where services already exist and infill is appropriate. And so we really appreciate council's support in this project as we move forward.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, again, one more call for any public comment or any additional council discussion. Okay, seeing none, this again is not an action item, and we'll be back for additional or for final consideration on Monday, October 4th. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, seeing nothing, we will be adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.